It's harrowing witnessing all these last moments of hope. You see the kind of hope fleeting, but you have to survive. You have to keep going.
Hi, and welcome back to Quest Markers. On this show, we talk about video games and the stories they tell with a focus on narrative. My name is Marina, my pronouns are she, her, and this is a special Halloween episode. So, of course, today we're talking about Resident Evil, specifically 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4 remakes. Spoiler warning, we do spoil all of the aforementioned games, and we do also talk a little bit about Code Veronica, Revelations, and RE5. Disclaimer, the RE games are rated mature by the ESRB, so please keep that in mind as you're listening. Today's guest is author and narrative designer Thomas Roland. Thank you for being here, and let's get into it. Hello. Before we get into your introduction, are you staying hydrated? What are you drinking?
Hello. Yes, I am staying hydrated. I do have my bottle of water here now. This is probably a really bad idea to be having this at this point of night, but I did get myself a Red Bull on the way home.
No.
Because my brain is a little sludgy today. So we're going to be wired for a little while, but I'm sure nothing bad will happen at all.
No, it'll be fine. I made a coffee, but it's decaf, so I think I'll be fine.
That's at least responsible.
I'm trying. I tried. Like, I just won't sleep if I have coffee now, because it's pretty late. And I have some water with like a little vitamin tablet in it. So I'm trying to be hydrated and responsible.
Very fancy.
Yeah, but I would be up all night if I had coffee. And I don't particularly want to be tonight because we're talking about horror games, horror survival games. And you just said, before we hit record, you just said that you saw a shadow from outside. Was it your neighbors had like their door open?
No, I like where my bedroom is. My door was partially closed, and from the corner of my eye, for a second, my brain was like, somebody's standing there. And I absolutely just to myself. But we're all good. All the doors are now closed. I have turned on every single light I can in the house. So we are more safe.
Perfect. It's the only way to do it. I'm the opposite. I just have like candles, but
well, that's a vibe.
Yeah, it is. It's great. Could you please introduce yourself for all of us?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Thomas Roland. I'm a current writer and fledgling narrative designer as well. That's me, I guess, in a nutshell. Really, there's not too much to it.
And before I ask you about your favorite games, I also just wanted to note that I have your physical book on my desk. So if you're listening to this, go check out the Journeys anthology. It's written by all Australian writers. It's fantastic. And Thomas has a short story in there.
Yeah.
But let's talk about video games. What are some of your favorite games or favorite game series?
Ooh, it's straight off the bat, Dragon Age. Everything Dragon Age. I love it. Inquisition's my favorite. Or maybe two. I fluctuate a lot between all of them. Which one's my favorite?
Not Inquisition.
Inquisition. It's just like every different one of the Dragon Ages has like a different flavor of characters, and like the gang's very different. Like Inquisition, everyone's very witty and charming. Two is pretty much best described as a bisexual disaster, just roaming around. This year, Resident Evil 2 has definitely popped into one of my top games of all time, though.
So good.
It is incredible game.
So good. Anything else besides Dragon Age and RE2?
Oh, Halo's always my fallback as well. I do love my Halo games. Just absolute classics. Halo 3 ODST is probably my favorite out of the lot of them. Impeccable vibe. And you get a new appreciation for jazz music while playing as well.
I'm not there yet. I'll get there one day. I'll play ODST one day.
Yes.
What are you currently playing?
That's a great question. Depends on the day, because I have an obnoxiously long list of currently in progress games. Currently, I am playing Final Fantasy 16. I'm also playing Final Fantasy 14 Endwalker at this current point.
So good.
Very, very good. Very, very good. I'm also playing a lot of the Resident Evils. Multiple have been started. So there's Code Veronica X, Resident Evil 5, and Revelations had just started. Each bit kind of connects in, but then kind of is just all over the place. At least it seems that way currently. I'm sure as I get further into it, more will reveal in the classic Resident Evil fashion.
I think that's what's so special about Resident Evil is that all of the games just kind of play on top of themselves and reveal different parts of the plot and different parts of different characters' lives. And I think that makes the series really special, but we'll get into that. I'm currently playing Elden Ring, and I am not I would not consider myself a Souls player. This is my first Souls game, so
yes.
It's going okay. My strategy is just be like wildly over-leveled and just be a menace, and my Tarnish just called Onion Ring, and she doesn't really have any idea what's going on because I don't really have any idea what's going on. Like, I missed some of the side quests that explain the lore, so I'm still like waddling around being like, what's the Elden Ring? And it's like, I could probably go to the final boss right now. So.
That's such a Dark Souls thing, though. It's like you can skip everything. You can have zero context. You end up at the end, you're the lord of everything. It's like,
yep.
What happened?
Yep. I'll need to watch some video essays, but we'll get there.
It's the best series for deep dive conspiracy theory video essays. I've watched so many, and I've not finished a full Dark Souls game yet, or full Souls-like game at all either.
The video essays are really good. The Souls video essays are really good.
They're just fascinating because it's also like conspiracies. Nobody knows exactly what anything is. Everything feels like a big conspiracy.
Yeah, absolutely. But it kind of feels like that in Resident Evil too, except they do explain, like anytime that you get a dossier in Resident Evil, you're like, oh yes, more lore. And that's what we're here to talk about today. So again, we're here to talk about the Resident Evil series. So we'll be talking about 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4 remakes. It's Halloween. It's obligatory. And we'll start off with a recap, but we did challenge ourselves to recap the games in one sentence each. And you're going to kick us off with 0.
Oh God, we're starting with 0. Okay. Ooh, opera singer gets mad into leeches. I think is my recap of what I took away from that game.
Do you want to add anything?
Well, that's my one sentence.
Fair. I wrote mine out because there's no way that I could do it in one sentence. And they're run-on sentences, so don't judge me. But okay, recap of RE1. A special tactics and rescue service police, STARS force, go to investigate missing team members, get stranded at a scary mansion filled with zombies, and escape after learning that their squad leader works for an evil bioweapon/pharmaceutical company that operated out of the mansion/laboratory owned by the Umbrella Company and was experimenting on live human subjects.
That is so cheating. That is not one sentence.
That is one sentence.
That's stretching a sentence to the maximum limit.
That is one sentence. Alternatively, Jill Valentine and Barry Burton saved the day.
Perfect. There. That's it. That's RE1 in a nutshell.
That's RE1, pretty much. Do you want to go to 2? I gave you the Leon games, obviously.
Oh, yes. No. RE2. Well, that's just Leon S. Kennedy and the really, really bad first day.
It's so true. It's so true. Oh, poor Leon.
Poor Leon.
Poor Leon. He had the worst time.
Yeah.
Okay, 3. I have my written one, and then I'll try for one on the spot. But Resident Evil 3, this is what I got. 24 hours prior to the events of RE2, Nemesis, a bioweapon developed by the Umbrella Corporation, is sent to kill the remaining members of STARS for their knowledge of their inhumane experiments, with the plot following Jill Valentine's eventual escape from Raccoon City, thanks to Barry Burton, the character of all time.
Yes, Barry Burton. I feel really bad if anybody's listening to this not having ever played an RE before or Resident Evil before, because you're giving such great recaps of the story, and then I'm just waddling in with like, Leon, no more explanation.
Honestly, there's no more explanation needed, because before I played any of these games, I knew about Leon. So, what about 4? You wanna do RE4? Do it for him. Ooh. Do it for Leon.
I feel like sticking in theme for Leon, it'd be Leon has a really, really bad holiday in Spain.
Oh, it's so true. You're not wrong. You're not wrong at all. All right. Well, let's get into the topics. And I really, really want to start with Resident Evil 1, because there are so many games in this series, but none of that would be possible if the very first game in the series didn't do well. So I would love to start there. What do you think made RE1 so special?
I think RE1, it literally sums itself up with its first brilliant opening line. Every time you kind of load up RE1, it has the black screen and the white text appears onto the screen. And that changes as depending on how far you get into the game. But the first one of those is enter the survival horror. And I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe that's the first time survival horror is kind of coined as well. It does start with RE1, and it starts for a very good reason, because they just got so much right. I think it does an amazing job in the fact that all of it, pretty much all of it, is just one giant puzzle. Everything's a puzzle, down from the mechanics of the game, having to work around the limitations that are imposed on you, to the actual story and the lore that you are having to piece together gradually as you collect files, as you have new cutscenes with different characters, and as you kind of progress to the new locations throughout the mansion and beyond.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything that you said. And I would add like one thing, and this is before I even played RE1, but one thing where I was like, oh, this is so unique, are just the camera angles in that game. And I think they did that on purpose, because there's what you see and then there's what you don't see. And what you see is, can be pretty scary, but then what you don't see is even scarier than what you see, because you're like, I don't know what's around the corner. And I think there was so much intention put behind every single camera angle. Like there's one room in the west wing of the mansion where when you enter it, it's just like extremely focused on your character, in my case, Jill. And I was like, I can only see Jill from the waist up. I'm terrified. Like I don't want to step foot into this hallway. I don't know what's waiting for me. And I think in that hallway, I know that there's a few enemies. I don't know if they show up when you come through that door, and whether that door you kind of unlock later on once you've gotten rid of them. But I know that we played the game really differently. Like I would go in and get rid of everything, and I would go in with the lighter, and I made sure that I had no crimson heads walking around. Whereas I think, correct me if I'm wrong, that you were really focused on inventory management, and were like, well, I need to save my bullets. I need to save my oil.
Absolutely. I think we both avoided Crimson Heads. And for reference, Crimson Heads in Resident Evil 1, when you kill a zombie, the way to fully put it down, to permanently kill it, is to either shoot off its head, which is a kind of rare chance or randomized chance to happen, or unless you use the shotgun. Or you can burn it with fire, which you learn. You learn these two things in a document later that you do come across. If you do not dispose of them, I think you discovered this, that it runs on a timer the other day. But after 20 minutes of in-game time, they will turn into what is known as a Crimson Head. And pretty much they are faster, they are more deadly, and they are far more lethal and terrifying, especially if you do not know and if you come across the document, if you don't come across the document that mentions them, which I can't quite remember. Does that turn up at the laboratory?
It turns up. Yeah, it turns up fairly late. It's either the laboratory or it's the residence.
Yeah,
it might be the lab, actually.
I think it's quite late. So there's every chance that you definitely would have accidentally triggered one. I remember the first time and I think it's kind of expected that the first zombie that you fight yourself is in that first hallway after the dining room.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously you don't know what you're doing. You put it down, you go back, you proceed to explore, and you forget about that zombie specifically for after a while. And that is most likely going to be the first Crimson Head that you encounter too. And I don't think I dealt with that until the very end of the game, because I think I went in there, I'm going, oh, this is terrifying and really, really, really bad. So I'm just going to sprint to the next door and hope for the best. And I think I proceeded to avoid that hallway best I could. And that was pretty much a lot of my gameplay too, because I think RE1 specifically gives you a lot of option of you can either fight or you can run and try and work out another way around this. Both have their own risks associated with it. Because obviously, it becomes a thing of like, I have limited resources. How do I manage that? Where do I choose to expend it? And is this going to bite me in the ass essentially later?
I was going to say, back to your first point about survival horror, it really is about, yes, certainly the mystery and the thrill and the puzzles, but so much of the mechanics center around the uncertainty of what your inventory is going to look like in the next room. Or even in the current room.
Absolutely.
Whether that's, it's like, okay, well, I have these bullets with me in a really small inventory. Like, should I also bring like the shotgun with me? It's more powerful, but I have less bullets for that. And how much healing do I have? Do I just run past it? And then if it grabs me, I'll just heal. Like, so I think that so much of, especially in RE1, of, and again, we're talking about the remake games, so much of it is, when I enter this room, what's going to happen? And what do I have at my disposal right now that I can use? Because you have such a small inventory in that game.
Yeah.
But flipping the page maybe a little bit, I know the original games from 0 to 4, so 0, 1, 2, and 3 were really similar in that they were very much kind of the well-known RE camera angles. And then 4 took a brand new direction and was more of an action game. And you could kind of feel that in the remakes as well, because 2 is very much more of an action game than 0 and 1 remake. But it still, I think, has that kind of RE1 feel of you go into a room, you don't have a lot with you, there's few enemies, and they're probably hiding, or they might be on the floor and you think that they're dead, but they're not. Similar to 3, plus you're like being stalked by Mr. X and Nemesis in 2 and 3. But then 4, you get these like hordes of enemies, where before it was like, oh, I have to be really strategic about when I enter this room, what am I going to do? Although there was that one horde in RE2 with the prison, in the prison where all the zombies come at you. You're like, how am I supposed to get out of here? But then 4 flips that completely on its head and goes, we're just going to throw a bunch of hordes at you. But similar mechanics kind of stay in place. I mean, we lose the kind of, RE1 camera angles, but it's still like, am I going to have enough of anything to be able to survive? Am I going to have enough inventory? Am I going to have enough ammo? Am I going to have enough healing in order to survive? That was really long-winded, but my question is, what are your thoughts on that new direction for RE4?
I feel like a lot of it can be reflected coming into it from a very narrative perspective as well. Because obviously, I think comparing 2 and 4 specifically, because obviously both are Leon, or at least if you play Leon's route in Resident Evil 2, both are Leon, both is the exact same character. But you're talking about Leon the first day as a cop. He's missed his first day. He's come fresh out of being a recruit and having to deal with this situation that is far beyond his skill levels. And obviously in that kind of situation, you're going to be reacting a lot differently to where Leon in Resident Evil 4 is coming in as a specialist. He is skilled, he is trained up, he knows what to do, which is clear by him now parrying chainsaws, flipping out of windows. And I think that's a great reflection of like his growth and his power rise in that. I think it becomes a different situation from Resident Evil 2 is about surviving. Resident Evil 4 is about protecting Ashley. Like that is your main objective. And that is where there are a lot of moments where you have that same like, oh, I need to do this, but it's because Ashley's being carried off, or you're trying to get to where she is. And a lot of it's kind of the pressure of that time. And obviously you're kitted out so much more comfortably. Yeah, I think it does come back to like, what character are you trying to portray in this game? Very much determines what tone you're going to go for. And that informs, obviously, how are you going to design your mechanics around that? How are you going to design your mood around that? And how do you want to design your player expectations around that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And I know when we were talking about this the other day, and I think you mentioned it a few weeks ago as well, of just commending Capcom for just trying new things and just being like, yeah, like this formula has worked for us for many games now, and it's been really successful, and it's allowing us to make the next game. And then completely turning the tables and being like, you know what, we're going to make something completely different. I think that's really cool. But yeah, I really like that point narratively. And I have to ask, because I think for both of us, like we just really love Leon as a character. Why do you think that Leon is such a fantastic character?
Oh, he's so good. He's
fantastic.
He's so good. You can't. I don't think you can go into Resident Evil and not love Leon, or not at least like him. He's such a likable person, and it's very funny. 'Cause, I don't know. I kind of get the sense in a lot of his writing, it feels like it's trying to be a very macho character. He's trying to be this kind of edgy action character with these quippy one-liners that he kind of rolls off. But a lot of the delivery, not necessarily delivery, but a lot of the time when he kind of whips these out, it feels like something he's rehearsed in the shower. He's like, yeah, that'd be such a good line. And then he pulls it out middle of combat. And he's just so funny, but he's also such just a kind-hearted protagonist as well. He strays that line very nicely, I feel, between being an action character in a shooter, in a lot of senses. He's an action character in a shooter, but he still has that good nature. He's very kind-hearted, and everything you do always has compassion for whatever other characters happen to be on scene with you. Obviously, you see that when he first meets Claire, no hesitation, he's helping. And then you have the relationship that he develops with Marvin in the RPD. And it's kind of that, it's immediately a protector. He's always a protector, which obviously comes back in RE4, being responsible directly for Ashley.
I 100% agree with everything that you said. And I would add, especially going through RE2 Remake and then RE4 Remake, I wonder if someone did RE4 Remake and then RE2 Remake, if they would have the same opinion. But doing 2 and then 4, you also realize in 2, like, just how much of a dork Leon is. Like, in like the most wholesome, lovable way. Like, he's just so relatable. And you're right, he is literally having the absolute worst first day ever, and comes out of that experience wildly traumatized for many reasons.
Yeah.
And then in 4, like he's had 6 years of the most intense FBI type training. You know, he's a part of a squad, a special tactics team that reports directly to the president of the U.S. And yet when he says those one-liners, like, I think the intention is to be cool, but also like knowing who Leon was in 2, and I commend the voice director and the voice actor Nick Apostolides as well. Knowing who Leon was in 2, when he says those lines, like, yeah, it's cool. And yeah, he does have all of this training under his belt, but he's also still just Leon. Like, he's still this dork. And I love that.
Absolutely. I think it's like perfectly kind of summed up too, because he's kind of what everyone kind of wants to do in that situation. I think it's summed up great where Lord Sadler comes in, he's giving his evil monologue, kind of introducing himself, and Leon's line and reaction to this situation is to say, oh, what was it? Tell someone who gives a shit. And then he shoots him in the head, no hesitation. Like, yeah, like that makes sense. Obviously it goes bad and everything kind of doesn't work, but it's just very relatable. It's such a relatable character who's not mucking around. He kind of acts a bit more normal, I guess, compared to everybody around him.
Yeah, no, absolutely. 1,000%. He's great. You spoke about kind of Leon as a character and how he fits in narratively. Obviously, this is a horror series, maybe moving a little bit more into action in the later games, I suppose. But what do you think was the scariest narrative moment for you?
Ooh, across all of them?
Yeah, across all of them.
Oh, I feel... Oh, there's so many good moments. 2 of them kind of resonate with me, and both of them from 2, so I'm very biased here. I think the first one is the Sherry section, where you're having to hide from Chief Irons.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, like, kind of replaying it is a little bit of a goofy thing because, like, it's very easy to, like, hide from him. You can, people have shown, like, in speedrunners, I think they literally just kind of chase him around. It's very funny to watch. But running through that for the first time is you've gone from, obviously, being at least equipped to deal with situations to being defenseless, having nothing, and having Irons, this absolute creep, kind of chasing you around. And it's very deeply unsettling. And also unnerving, as you kind of like, you can kind of expect where he's going, but it's always that kind of doubt on what's going to happen. I think RE2 captures a lot of that thematically throughout the game, is like the doubt of what's going to be next. And like, I think this is going to be right. I'm not too sure. You're never 100% sure. And that could be whether an enemy is going to go a certain way, whether you're going to accidentally trigger a licker as you walk past it, or if that guy sitting in the corner that you're approaching is actually dead. And you're always second guessing, absolutely always second guessing. And I think Sherry's a great kind of moment for that. The second part of it, and I think this is also a continued kind of moment, I'm not sure if this is narrative, but I guess narrative kind of is all of it, is just Mr. X in general. When he first shows up, you know you're in for a painful time. When he first moves the crashed helicopter, that is horrifying. And because you've come out of an area that you can't move around in. You've got nowhere realistically to go while you're there. You can't really loop around. So you just have to run. And then I can't quite remember, but I believe you go out onto the rooftop. And I think the only option, you only have like one directional option. And you can hear him. And I think the sound design on Mr. X in the remake is done so perfectly well, because you can hear when he's nearby, but you can never quite hear if he's above you or around the corner or something like that. And he has such a habit of popping up in the same doorway that you're trying to go to. And I have myself so many times with Mr. X, because he has a habit of just appearing out of nowhere, the last spot you want. I believe that there were a couple of times that I had 3 zombies that I was trying to evade. I'll be like, okay, I'm going to save my ammo. I'll be really careful. I'm going to make this quick. And then you open the door and Mr. X is just barreling towards you with his massive, heavy thumping feet. And I think it's done well that he's not necessarily the main antagonist of the game. It's Birkin. Birkin is the main antagonist. Mr. X, obviously you fight him in the final boss, one of the final boss fights, as his tyrant form. But it's the fact that he's not the main antagonist. He is just there and he is deadly and he is hunting you. Is that kind of, it's that doubt again. It's that doubt of, I don't know where he is. Is he in here? I don't think he is, but you never quite know.
Terrifying, horrifying. And there's a nice nod to him in 4 as well with Mendez, which I was like, oh, is that a T00 tyrant?
I was convinced he was
apparently
a tyrant.
Not.
I was absolutely convinced.
Yeah, with the hat, it was a nice little nod. But yeah, terrifying. I think for me, the scariest narrative moment was just learning more and more about the Trevor family in RE1. Yeah. I had plenty of jump scares. We'll talk about jump scares after this, but just learning more and more about the Trevor family. I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it, because George Trevor was just an architect. Like, he was just hired to make this manor, and he had a family. He had his wife Jessica and his daughter Lisa. We fight Lisa in RE1 as well. Like, just, they were experimented on, and it was just brutal what was done to them. The way that the information is given to you is like through handwritten notes, and you really get to just be in the character's shoes. Like, that just places you in the character's shoes. And it was one of those, like, what's going on here? Because I like, going into the game, I knew nothing about the Resident Evil series besides the fact that it was horror. So that, it was done so well. If the objective was to creep you out and to scare you, then it was fulfilled in spades. It was so good. But yeah, I think in terms of jump scares, I have 2 that stand out. RE1, late game, like when you're close to getting into the laboratory, where you've done most of the mansion, you've done the courtyard, you've done the residence, you're kind of like looping back and forth to get the 2 books with the eagle medallion and the wolf medallion. And at one point you like loop through the kitchen to get to another wing of the mansion. To get, I forget what it is. I think it's a battery pack or something. But I was like leaving the kitchen, and I was like, that crimson head, and I didn't have enough oil. This is one of the only zombies that I'd let just stay there. I was like, I don't think I'm coming back here. It's a dead end. I was walking in a hallway, and I was like, that thing is going to follow me. And instead, a hunter came through a door that was previously closed. Yeah, did not enjoy that. Terrifying. And then the second one was RE3, which we haven't spoken much about. But RE3, you're climbing this like really long ladder as Jill. And and I was like, Nemesis is going to be at the top. And then I think I like spilled my drink.
You knew it was coming.
Yeah, I knew it was coming. And then I spilled my drink. And it was terrible. But that's the thing. Like, somehow this series is so good at being like, you know what's coming. We're setting it up. We're setting it up in a really obvious way. Like, the game knows exactly what it is.
Absolutely. But it teases you so much. Teases you constantly. RE1 does it constantly with window shots. Window shots are
I hate it.
The worst and most unsettling moment, because every time you come into a new room and there's a window shot, you're like, something's coming through that. Absolutely, something's coming through that. And the whole time you are tensed.
but it does it so well. But flipping gears a little bit, I know one thing when we were talking about, as we were preparing for this, kind of the overall themes of the game, one thing that you brought up was the theme of becoming your own savior. And I really, really, really liked that. Would you like to elaborate on that? Because I think you tell this story really nicely and really eloquently.
Yeah, I will try to recapture some eloquence.
I've talked it up now. Instead, we can talk about the fact that Leon gets his really cool leather jacket taken away like 3 seconds into the game.
Let's talk about the biggest controversy in Resident Evil 4. What happened to the cool jacket?
I am still so salty about that.
Oh, he looks good in the black. Let's be real. He looks good in all black.
I want the leather jacket though.
Oh, what a style.
I want the leather jacket though. Okay, now that we've spoken about the leather jacket. Sorry, I know I'm putting a lot of pressure, but you did talk about this so eloquently, this theme of becoming your own savior that I hadn't thought about beforehand at all.
Yeah, I think RE1's a very good kind of demonstration. RE1 and RE2 kind of follow the similar pattern, I believe, because you come in with practically nothing. You've got no knowledge. You've got no expertise. And all of the documents, to reiterate on it, is of people losing hope. Everywhere you go everything is falling apart. I think the Trevor family tragedy beautifully summarizes it, because when you first start uncovering it, it's a gradual things don't feel good. George Trevor discusses about how he was brought on to be the architect for this crazy place, and then how he brings his family, and obviously stuff goes from bad to worse. But it's the moments that everyone's calling out to a loved one. I believe I watched a video not too long ago, but it also points out that a lot of documents you find in Resident Evil 1 are to a lover or some family member in a last desperate plea. A lot of it's like, to my Ada, yada, yada, and they'll give their final moments. And it's harrowing witnessing all these kind of last moments of hope. You see the kind of hope fleeting, and you're expected to push through. You read those and you're expected, this is happening, this is terrible, but you have to survive. You have to keep going. And throughout these games, you do have moments where you are saved by happenstance. You do get lucky breaks. I think Barry Burton is the best reflection of these moments.
The character of all time.
Best character of all time. If you're playing Jill on Resident Evil 1, he will save you a couple times, or at least gives you little kind of tidbits to help you along the way. But the best one is when he saves you, when you get the shotgun and the roof starts caving in on you and he manages to save you and says the iconic line of where you almost became a Jill sandwich. Brilliant, man. But a lot of the time, you're relying on yourself, and as you're going through the game, it's gradually opening up and you're obviously discovering more areas, but you're also gearing up in two ways. You're getting kitted up more, you're acquiring more items, you're becoming better equipped to deal with the more dangerous situations. But you're also learning at the same time. It's a very big thing of your understanding not only how the game mechanics work, but you're understanding, well, how many hits can I take? How best do I deal with these situations? I think a good reflection of that is how we both differently dealt with the Crimson Heads, or how to avoid that. And that's ultimately your choice. Your choice is how to deal with these situations. And I think it culminates towards the end of each one where you're not saved by some great event. The monster doesn't simply die. It's your moment. You, in the end, have to save yourself. And yeah, sure, you get a rocket launcher. They throw you a rocket launcher, just blow the shit out of everything. And it's amazing. It's so satisfying. But it's a journey of you having to keep your own hope alive, to rekindle your own hope, and to eventually be the savior that you need in these moments. You can't rely on anybody else. You have to take the moment of this, and you need to become the savior and pull yourself out. And I think that's a beautiful moment where it also demonstrates in horror films, like a lot of the time, the screaming 80s actress needs to be saved by some large man, and it'll fall into all sorts of tropes. But I think this is also why we see people fall in love so much with horror things like Alien, because in the end, it is somebody pushed to the point where they have to save themselves, and they're able to do that. They're able to pull themselves through. And we see that journey, and we resonate with that journey far more than somebody just happened to being saved at the last minute.
So eloquently said. And I think a part of the heart and soul of RE for me are the characters, which is so closely linked to what you're saying, because you see them be pushed to the edge, and then you leave a game being like, oh, I'm glad that they're okay. You know, we don't really know what happens to Billy, I guess, at the end of Zero, but
true. He
okay.
kind of just walks off into the forest.
Yeah.
Gives a thumbs up and leaves.
Just
in classic
leaves.
Billy fashion.
But like, I was so happy to see Rebecca and Billy be okay at the end of that, and Jill and Barry and Chris be okay at the end of 1, and Barry did survive in my playthrough.
Yeah,
so.
I was gonna say that depends how you finish Resident Evil 1.
That's true. That is true. I'm so sorry. Do you want to tell the story?
I will.
You should tell the story.
I will sadly tell my story. Because in Resident Evil 1, there are multiple endings, which is incredible for a story of its time.
Released in the late 90s.
Yeah, to have branching narratives at all was insane. It has so many little tidbits that branch off from each other.
Oh, yeah.
But essentially, you come into the mansion with Jill, Chris, Barry, and Wesker. And then you have Brad, the helicopter pilot, who kind of leaves and comes back towards the end. In the final moments, there's a whole host of things that happen, but essentially you can accidentally leave Chris behind, or Jill, depending on who you're playing with. You can accidentally leave them behind, so they don't get saved. So they die if you don't get them out. But in the final moment, you have one final showdown with Tyrant, this big hulking biological terror, and you have to fight it. The bit I struggled with, though, is I'm trying to fight it while also navigating the fixed camera perspectives, which are amazing. I did occasionally have some gripes with them, though, where I'd just be like trying to see what's going on in a very big action piece moment, and I can't quite get it to work for me. So I'm kind of just running around desperately, trying to find where Tyrant even is on the helipad. I look away for a moment, trying to figure out what direction I'm going. I run to another spot, and the camera snaps back perfectly in time to see Barry Burton just get absolutely impaled by Tyrant.
No.
And then I fire my final shot and win the game. And then I have a very sad scene where I fly away without Barry and only Chris. And I was so heartbroken that I lost Barry in that final moment.
Oh, Barry.
Oh, Barry.
Canonically, he survives.
Canonically, yeah, they all survive. Oh, I didn't mention Rebecca. Rebecca, obviously, is there if you're playing as Chris.
Mm-hmm. I haven't done the Chris playthrough. But
Yeah, I haven't done it either, but I would love to go back and do it.
also because, like, I want to know what happens with Rebecca. Like, playing Zero as Rebecca, who, like, she's also a really new medic. Like, for her to be put in that situation, to your earlier point of, like, now she has to save herself, and she's with this, like, convict, essentially. Figuring out, like, can she trust the person who is meant to be, you know, her partner in crime? pun not intended. But yeah, I really want to know also what happens with Rebecca. I don't know if she shows up in a future game, but I guess we'll find out.
Yeah.
We're nearing the hour mark.
Oh, wow.
And so I really wanted to talk about this video essay that I watched literally a couple of hours ago. I'll put it in the description, but its thesis was that survival horror as a genre only has the illusion of difficulty. And it's meant to keep you on edge. It's meant to keep you teetering on the edge, because the second that you die, you lose that tension. And so as it keeps you on the edge, it keeps that tension up. And it has to, for the player's sanity, also relieve that tension through save rooms. But it was talking about kind of leveraging uncertainty, which is really, really hard because our brains are wired to recognize patterns. But the way that it leverages uncertainty for the player is things like resource management. We spoke about that, especially in 1. Like, how many bullets am I going to have? Am I going to pick up a green herb in this room? Do I have enough healing? What do I even take with me if I need to take like 3 items to solve a puzzle? Your small inventory, you don't know what you're going to find in the next room. It also holds hostage your ability to save whenever you want. So you can't just pause and save and quit the game. You have to like go and find a save room and save. There's also, I think intuitively, maybe we've known this, but it's been confirmed that there's inconsistency in how many bullets it takes to kill a zombie. In specifically, they called out RE2, which makes sense. Like if you know, and we all go into so many games like, oh, it's going to take 3 hits for this enemy. It makes it less scary. There's also inconsistency in how quickly the walkers move in RE2. Like sometimes a zombie just lunges at you and sometimes it doesn't. There's uncertainty in the environment, like that example that I gave earlier, where the hunter just broke down a door in the west wing of the mansion in RE1. There's uncertainty in how much health you have. Like, you don't have a health bar in many of these games. It just says, like, fine, caution. And then caution is either in yellow or red. And then it also, in some of the games, controls what you can and can't see with the camera placements, especially. And so it like does so much tampering with your predictive ability. And I wanted to talk about that because, and I know this is really long-winded, but I really love how all of that comes together, not only mechanically, but narratively as well. Because if you think about like, yeah, of course there's going to be inconsistency with how an enemy moves. It makes them feel more humanoid if they're moving in a way where you can't predict. Or, this is more video game logic, but like only being able to save at a typewriter. Like, I love the use of typewriters in the series, especially because so many of the notes in RE1 look like they're written on a typewriter. So I think both mechanically and narratively, like, I love this idea of survival horror only having this illusion of difficulty by just keeping you on edge. And I say that because at the end of my playthrough of RE1, I had like 15 green herbs. I like didn't know what to do with myself. I had so much. But yeah, I think it's brilliant. And again, the thesis for this video essay was horror games can't be too difficult, because if they are and you're constantly dying, you're not in that space that it wants you to be in, which is, what's going to happen in the next room, and keeping up that tension. What do you think?
Absolutely. I think it also, I think it's brilliant because it really taps into the whole concept that games are an illusion. It's just like realistically, it's pixels on a screen. I'm going to super nerd out for this moment.
We're going straight in there. All right,
it's super deep. I'm gonna nerd out for a second. I think it taps. They also discuss this indirectly in the video essay a little as well, but it kind of taps into. I'm probably going to butcher the pronunciation of this, but housing is circle, and the concept of pretty much losing yourself to the game, being totally immersed in it, achieving total immersion. And it's an interesting thing because for that to even happen, you need to understand first the fundamental rules and what those rules mean. In the case of Resident Evil, you know that taking damage will mean you die eventually. That is a hard set rule. You shooting things will eventually kill it. And stuff like that. And then it obviously comes into how your character controls, how you aim, and how you save. But I think what Resident Evil does so well with that is it finds key moments to rip that out from under you to give you a sense of horror. Because there are moments where something should work. It's worked before and it doesn't, and you do not know how to react in that situation. I think it's got to be done very well because it can pull you out of the moment, and it can make you feel cheated, but it can also give you a sense of like, how do I react to this? And it gives a sense of like, it is a living and breathing world. Things do change and everything does feel tense because it can't be predicted, whether that's the kind of movement pattern of zombie or the guy racing past my window as well, apparently. It's an unpredictable thing. But yeah, it's all about like, how do you immerse the player in that, and how do you strategically bend the rules to make it feel terrifying? I think Mr. X, kind of rolling on with that, Mr. X is a perfect example of that because the whole game you're rolling through and you know if you go into the next room, it's the next room. Typically, the zombies won't follow you in. Sometimes you'll hear them banging against the door and then you know, okay, there's a set amount of time that they're going to all fall in. I'll be able to take them on, or I can choose to try and run to the next room and escape them. Mr. X, when he's introduced, all of a sudden breaks all that. That rule is out the window because he will march room to room and stalk you and hunt you down. And all of a sudden that becomes a complication. Like, how do you adapt to this new rule? And it does this multiple times. And it's always learning how to adapt, whether that's kind of learning to run around new enemies or use the new weapons that are at your disposal, such as in Resident Evil 4, the kind of creepy vine Las Plagas guys. You can either take them down, and most likely you're shooting them at the start, and eventually you might learn that they're sensitive to light. So flashbangs, insta-kill. And you learn to work around that. And that also kind of ties into the point that you feel as a player that you're growing and you're adapting throughout the whole game.
Yeah, absolutely.
That felt like a hella long rant.
No, that was great.
This Red Bull is doing its work.
It really is. I have a couple more questions. I know we're getting close to the hour, but I want to ask you why you think the series is so popular. But before that, Saudade or the bullet or the blade?
Always Saudade. As much as I have been playing, no joke, I've been playing, is it Saudade? Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah.
Okay, so I have no idea how to pronounce it.
I checked multiple times because I didn't want to mispronounce it. And now if I've mispronounced it, I'm going to feel really bad, but that's what multiple sources have told me.
Well, we will go with the multiple reputable sources. Saudade, by far my favorite. In saying that, though, I have been playing both of them on repeat the past couple of days. And they're so good, especially in Resident Evil 2, where you get to the end, you have to get to the true ending, where you have to play through the second playthrough. And that's when you get Saudade to kind of do the outro for you. It's such a good song. Such a good song.
It's so good.
But they both also feel like what Leon would listen to.
Absolutely.
At those times of his life. I feel like at the start, where like Resident Evil 2, he absolutely would be listening to the kind of grittier Saudade.
Absolutely.
And then RE4, 100% he's listening to a bit more dad country rock kind of tones. And Ashley is just having to put up with it on the drive back to America.
Yep. Absolutely. Well, no, they paddled back on that,
True,
little
yeah, that's
boat.
it. They were on the jet ski. Leon absolutely was singing Bullet in the Blade the whole time. He does not know the full song, though. He only knows like 3 lines of it.
He would
hums another bit and then does the chorus again.
1,000%. Leon Kennedy is such a fantastic character.
I love so much that this podcast has just become Leon Kennedy hour.
I mean, I just want everyone to know that before we hit record, I sent you the meme that says "do it for him," and it's just Leon Kennedy.
That is going on my wall, like straight up plastered on the wall.
I found that one on Google, but I'll make you one with Remake, Leon.
Ah, perfect.
With the jacket.
With the jacket, obviously.
Before we wrap up, why do you think the Resident Evil series is so popular?
It's just a story that sticks with you, I feel. Or not necessarily a story, but characters are very, very memorable. And in my opinion, I think characters will always trump story, no matter what. You could have an incredible world and you could have a very dense story and a very compelling narrative. But if you don't have strong characters to back that up, people aren't going to want to connect to it. So I think characters in the Resident Evil universe are just key. And yeah, in like Resident Evil 1, they're simple and they're just quirky and funny. It's sometimes just a bit of that 90s kind of cringe, kind of humor. But you love it. You absolutely love it. People love Barry Burton for a reason. And then you have that with Leon S. Kennedy, Claire, Ada, so many characters that people just connect with and want to see more of. And I suppose that's also kind of a reason why people want to get more lore. You want to see what else happens, what else affects these people. And that's how you end up going down the rabbit hole, I guess. It's kind of a run-on.
Yes. And I would add, I think it's really cool that you have characters coming back into narrative. So Jill's a great example of like, I played as Jill in RE1, you play as Jill in RE3, you play as Leon in RE2, you play as Leon again in RE4. Yeah, I agree. I think the characters are the heart and soul of the game.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for being here. I'm so happy that we had the chance to talk about these games. And I want to give you some space to plug absolutely anything that you want. The floor is yours.
Thank you. First, thanks so much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure. What am I doing at the moment is a great question. I'm bouncing around between a lot of things. I will be participating in NaNoWriMo this upcoming November. For those people that aren't aware, that is the National Novel Writing Month. Pretty much over the course of the month, I'll be writing 50,000 words, roughly, on a current project called Company of Silver. If you want to check that out, it's online. I am just listed under Thomas Roland on nanowrimo.com. If you also are into lore documents and stuff, I do have a current series called Nest of Lies as well, ongoing. I haven't contributed for a little while just because of things in the way, but that will be starting up a little bit again. And on top of that, I also offer freelance editing and proofreading services for anybody currently writing. And apart from that, you can catch me online pretty much everywhere.
Amazing. We'll include social links in the description. And again, if anyone wants to check out either the physical or the digital copy of Journeys, the Aussie speculative fiction series, you absolutely should. And you should read the short story, A Mountain Pass by Thomas Roland. Thank you so much for being here. This was really fun. Maybe we have you come back and we just talk about Leon and we do a character analysis.
Absolutely. Or we should talk about Resident Evil 6 and the Avengers moment where all the characters come back.
Oh, absolutely. I don't know. I don't know much about 6 besides watching the trailer, but it feels like so many things come together.
It's wild how many characters.
It's so good. It's so good. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for being on the first special episode, the Halloween special.
Yes.
And come back anytime.
Thank you for having me on for Spooky Month.
Thank you. Talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much for being here and for listening. I hope you're having a spooky, fun Halloween. Let us know what you thought about an episode where we spoke about multiple games. Would you prefer that, or would you prefer for us to focus on a single game? As always, socials are in the description. If you're not subscribed or following along, feel free so that you don't miss a future episode. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time. Take care.